Welcome back. This is video 2 of the Orange Attack Path, where we're talking about finding configuration files that contain passwords. The last of video 1, we talked about this exploit that we found for QDPM version 9.1. We went out to exploit DB and found the author's Python 3 script. The author's name is the PC Nerd. And we downloaded it. And then after we downloaded it, we had to clean up the file so it would execute without errors. And then we talked about how to execute it. Make sure the trailing slash is on the URL. So as of now, we've executed the exploit and a backdoor was dropped. So the easy thing to do is just copy this link out of the console that you have and paste it into your browser. In the event you forget about that backdoor, you can always navigate through the directory structures because they don't protect the directory structures. They do protect it with the .htaccess file, but with the vulnerability you're able to overwrite that .htaccess file so that you can pull up the directory listings. So if you initially go to the uploads directory, you can see there's 2 folders. I go into the users, and here's 3 backdoors that I've uploaded. And the last one, I will double click, and if we go back to the source code and look at the simple backdoor that we uploaded, we can do cmd equals and the command that we want to execute, and it lists the command. Another thing with commands is you can chain them together with a semicolon, and there are other characters that you can use also. So semicolon cat passwd allows me to see the passwd file. You do want to take time to study this file because it gives you the name, the user ID, the home folder, and what shell that they use after they log in. So if we come down to Kali, we see that Kali uses the user bin Z shell. But the user I created for B Ogden actually uses the bin bash shell. But it's good to recognize the users that are here. Also, sometimes the bad guys will hide their presence on the system by changing the shell and allowing one of these other users to authenticate. Granted, there are restrictions with SSH to allow that authentication, but the miscreants will find ways to hide amongst the files. So what we need to do is we need to poke around and look for some application configuration files, and to do that we need to find where the website is stored. Normally the website will be under var html, but oftentimes I'll go to the var directory just to see what's available, and I do see that HTML folder. And if I go into the HTML folder, just doing a directory listing through the web shell that I have, it shows the files and folders that I can interact with. One thing to note, that when the command is in the URL, it can be observed in the logs. So this web shell is actually quite noisy because the blue team, or the guys trying to detect your actions, would be able to see the commands that you're executing in the URL. I'm not going to worry about that for now, but again, looking at these files, I quickly look at them. I see there's a core folder, and there's the uploads folder that I'm in. I'm going to explore the core folder. So again, I'm going to just do slash. Oh, I did that before. Sorry about that. Core. And in the core folder, I do see there's a config directory. Let's go ahead and look at that config directory. Why is it doing And then in that config directory, I do see a databases.yaml file. So what I find interesting is if I go into the databases.yaml file, right now I'm just going to list it to make sure the command executes correctly. I'm going to copy this into another browser. And the primary reason I did that is I want to be able to just change the first part of the command to cat. And I do see it's a database file. I see that the name of the database is qdpm, the password is qd, and the password is blank. So this is a little deceiving how they wrote this. So if you right click and say view page source, you can actually see they wrapped this in PHP and URL encoded the actual password of qd password 7. So now we have the username qd and the password of qd password 7. This would allow us to log into the database from the command line, anything like that. So that's great that we found that. We're going to dig a little bit further with this. So first, let's go back to the presentation. So we found the database's YAML file. We went into it. We viewed the source to find the password. And what we have accomplished is a technique called exploit public facing application. We did have to log into the web application before the exploit would work, but some of your exploits will work without authentication. And then the next thing we did is we found unsecured credentials, or credentials that exist in local files, and adversaries will search for these all the time, especially if they land on a Windows box. They will search through file shares of information, searching for the keywords of password, username, and various others. So be mindful of what the miscreants are doing. So to summarize, we used an exploit to gain a web shell or a backdoor to the operating system. We searched for configuration files that contained additional passwords. We identified user accounts by looking in the web application. And actually, I don't think I did that. So if we went back and logged into QDPM, and we have the Braille Ogden user, with the winter 2022 password. And we can come down to users and we can say view all. And we can see that there's a Braille Ogden, Pam Hirwa, Frank Flores, Joe Reed, and Dana for the user accounts. We ended up creating Joe Reed, or we could have created Joe Reed, but in this web interface, we're not able to see their password. But because we have access to the database, we can actually pull up their password as it is in the database. And we could reverse engineer how they build the password and then crack it. Or we could just reset the password and then the person just thinks, oh, I forgot my password, and then they go through that process. So here are some more user accounts that could be utilized in future hack attempts or future techniques that we have to exercise in this attack path or the next attack path. The next one is we want to log in as Ogden using SSH. And this is different than your lab. Your lab will have a different user account that you'll log into. But what I wanted to demonstrate here is you would be able to log in with the Ogden user. And it's just local host for me. And I have the weak password. So I actually configured it so the Ogden account is using the same password as we found in that database file. Again, that is not the case for the lab that you'll be conducting. Well, this concludes the video. for the orange attack path where we find clear text passwords in configuration files.